Battle of Sullivan's Island took place in June of 1776. The British fleet from Jamaica sailed up to the Charleston harbor under the command of a guy named Peter Parker. No, it was not Spider-Man. It was another guy with the same name. He came up from Jamaica with 50 ships of the line, and he camped out right outside Charleston harbor, and they were going to go in, take Sullivan's Island, and choke Charleston. Henry Clinton, the infantry commander for the British Army, had moved down to South Carolina. There was a fellow named William Moultrie that was the commander of a little palmetto log fort on Sullivan's Island. It was called Fort Sullivan. After the battle, it got renamed after Moultrie, so it ought to tell you where this is headed. Palmetto trees do not splinter. They can lay over like this in a hurricane, then stand back up. All right, those things are spongy, and they will catch cannonballs, which is exactly what happened. They had mounds of dirt bulldozed up, and then they had palmetto logs lining it. It was crude, but it worked. Peter Parker and Henry Clinton, Army, Navy, did not get along very well, and they weren't working in concert with each other. So they each came up with a plan to take Fort Sullivan, and they weren't working together. Now, in the bay leading up to Charleston, there was a lot of sandbars and dangerous stuff that a ship can actually get stuck in. So they got a local pilot, and they put him in one of the lead ships, and they started heading, weaving in, weaving out. Well, that little fella decided he wanted to go shoot a cannon at the fort. So he went downstairs and started shooting a cannon, got his head blown off. That was the only guy that knew how to get into Charleston without getting stuck, and so that stalled the attack. They also had a mortar ship. It was a ship built around a mortar that shot like this, boosh. It was made for reducing forts. What happened was the water was so shallow that they couldn't get close enough to make effective shots against Fort Sumter, Fort Sullivan. They were actually loading it down with powder so much that it blew up, and they had to back that ship off. So now they come to their third try, which is blast them from long range if we can. So the Americans were in the fort. They had gun platforms set up, and they were making slow, steady, effective fire out against the British. British were out in the water. Pretend like that's a bay. All right, there's ships out there. That's how it was. And it was real choppy because the water was shallow. Imagine trying to shoot a deer doing this. You wouldn't be able to. Well, that's what they were doing, trying to hit the fort. So their fire was not very accurate. And the fire from the fort was very accurate. They tore them up. They damaged all kind of ships. The British had a lot more casualties. They had a lot of damage to these battleships. And they finally said, you know what? We're out of here. And they sailed back north. Now, even though the ships didn't meet with success, Henry Clinton had landed over 2,000 Marines further up the island, and he was going to march down and take the fort if the Navy couldn't. Well, the Navy couldn't. So he started coming down, and he ran into a creek. It was supposed to be only 18 inches deep. It was over 7 feet. Not to mention, there was a bunch of militia and Indians under the command of a guy named William Danger Thompson blasting away at him from the other side. So Clinton said, you know what? It's not worth it. Let's go north. The very next week after this battle, a little document called the Declaration of Independence was signed, and we became free and independent states.